Welcome back to another episode of the Max Turn Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we are squeezing in an episode previewing the Stanley Cup playoffs. We had originally thought that we would probably not record again until our contract projections were released, but timing worked out for our schedules and the NHL schedule that we were able to get an episode in talking about the playoffs. And I think we're both looking forward to that. So wanted to we'll talk through it together. We haven't really shared our thoughts with each other. We each create a bracket and we have a lot of similarities, but some interesting differences as well. So we'll talk through the matchups, give you our thoughts, maybe help you make a decision if you're entering a pool or anything like that. So we appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. Our content, including contract projections, max stat. Best place to find them now is afpanalytics.com. If you would like to interact or follow along kind of our live content at AFP Analytics on X, Blue Sky, Threads. We've been a little quiet there recently. Both of us have been busy for various things. So we will try to get content back up there, if not in the next couple weeks, definitely once at least contract projections are live. We're going to probably start working on those within the next week. That doesn't mean they're going to be posted anytime soon, but we're going to start grinding there. And then we're also going to be updating our max stat soon, those numbers for kind of the end of the regular season. And then the next update to that probably will not be until early into next season, so that will kind of be finalized sooner than later. And I think that's kind of where we are content wise, but look to the season end max stat and then the contract projections. Keep an eye out. We'll be doing the pending free agents, so both unrestricted and restricted for the summer, as well as players who are eligible for contract extensions. So though that's kind of what we are going to be starting to grind away at, and we'll probably release everything all at once, probably early to mid-May. Not to corner ourselves too much in that timeline, but that seems like we should be able to get it done in that time, especially if players continue coming off the board as free agents this spring. So I guess with that, let's get into our playoff preview matchup. I think we'll start in the East because yours and my bracket in the East is identical. So we'll kind of talk, I think we'll talk through the matchups, talk through who we have winning, and then we'll move into the Western Conference. But I'm assuming because we got to similar conclusions that we have a similar thought process, but let's talk through those so you as the listener can also make your own informed decision on if you agree or disagree with how we kind of have the East playing out. So I guess I'll let you kind of figure out where you want to start, give your thoughts, and then we'll kind of work from there.
I'm going to say let's start with the Carolina Ottawa series. Since Carolina was the best team in the East, we'll start there.
Sure.
Um, so that I actually like this matchup quite a bit, considering it's the best team versus I guess call it the worst playoff team in the East, even though
Right.
Ottawa was very solid this year. Um,
And by points, they're not.
True. Yes, just standings wise, because that's
Yeah.
how the NHL works. Wild card two, I'll specify that. Um, yeah, so the Senators go on a little bit of a run at the end of the season to sneak into the playoffs. I like them as a team. I'll just be honest pretty quickly here. It's a tough matchup for them. And pretty much whoever was drawing this matchup against Carolina, I did not really have going past the first round. Carolina's just way too experienced. They are a playoff team. I guess a little sneak peek here that I would have going far into the playoffs. Um, they just play the right kind of shutdown style. They can play very physical. They added a little bit of scoring this year. And honestly, I feel more comfortable about the Carolina Hurricanes in net than I have in recent years. So ultimately, like I almost feel better about Carolina than I have, and that's just makes it very tough for the Ottawa Senators, I think.
Yeah, I think I very much agree. I think Ottawa and Carolina, both on paper, are actually very strong 5-on-5 analytic teams, good at controlling play,
Yep.
which I don't think that bodes well for Ottawa because Carolina does it better, has more playoff experience, has a deeper roster.
It's kind of that like Ottawa is on the right track, but their game is the same game, and as you said, it's not to the same level.
And I also agree with you. I think I trust Carolina's goaltending just a little bit more, but I think the best potential best goalie in the series is in Ottawa's net. It's just can Linus Allmark play at that level? At times we saw it this season, but most of the season we did not. But if there's a goalie that can get hot and steal a series, he's one of the few in the East that you feel that you would be like, yeah, that makes sense that happened and Ottawa gets through. So if I'm Carolina, I don't dislike this matchup, but I don't think anyone wants to draw Ottawa the way that they came into the playoffs. So it's not going to be a complete rollover by any means, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
this should be a. I mean, I think all the East matchups are really fun and interesting series. But this one, you have two teams that actually play kind of similar styles of hockey. Carolina probably gets through, but it should be interesting. I kind of thought if Carolina didn't get through, I think that this might be their toughest challenge almost in the East, potentially.
Y Yeah, and I guess to add on to your point about Olmark, if he is at the top of his game, they could be a sneaky team to get at least to the conference finals.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that kind of is a transition into another one of the matchups that is kind of the next step for Carolina or Ottawa. It would be the Pittsburgh Penguins, Philadelphia Flyers matchup. So this is another kind of fun one when we talk about who is actually the best teams and kind of how we don't love the way the NHL does their playoff seeding. Um, Metro 2 and Metro 3 right here. I believe they were both a touch worse points wise than the wild card teams. You can fact check me there,
I
but
will as you
um,
talk.
these this was an interesting one because both of these teams I don't think were really expected to be here at this point. Um, Philadelphia, Philly, they went on a great run at the end of the season, very kind of getting hot at the right time um, type of situation. And everything started to click a little bit there. I will, whenever I can, give props to Dan Vladar, um, who
Your
had,
guy.
yeah, who I pretty much said not a great signing. And that backfired quite a bit for me. He's been very good for them. Um, When I look at the series, though, I look at Philly as the young and inexperienced playoff team, and I look at Pittsburgh as like, okay, regardless of kind of where the vets are at this point in their career, they've been here before, they've done it. I feel like whoever wins this series, like it's going to kind of stop here. Whoever they play in that next matchup in the second round is likely to beat them. But I think in this first round matchup between the Penguins and Flyers, I say the Penguins pull it off just due to that playoff veteran experience.
So fact checking, you are correct. Ottawa finished the season with 99 points. Both Pittsburgh and Philadelphia finished the season with 98 points.
Okay.
And for the record, Boston 100 points. So those teams all within basically a win of each other or a few overtime losses more is probably the better way to put that.
We shouldn't say like they're the worst teams because they are right there with each other. It's just if
Yes.
we want to be technical about it, the way the seeding works is questionable to many.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they're again coin flip and like looking at I guess looking at goal differential as well. They're a little bit weaker as well. Philadelphia finished the season only +7, but Pittsburgh's right there with Ottawa and Boston finishing +25. Ottawa finished 32, Boston +22, and even the Montreal Canadiens, who we will get to in a little while, only finished +27. So Pittsburgh is the stronger team on paper. Playoff experience as well. It's I think you wonder, did the Flyers catch enough fire early in the, I guess late in the season, I should say. Did they catch enough fire and are able to, I hate saying it, but carry the momentum into the postseason? And I don't know, maybe it's not momentum, but kind of just finding the right combinations and their younger players finding the right level of game. I think the one interesting thing is maybe Pittsburgh might not be able to handle the kind of speed that Philadelphia can play with. They have a lot younger legs, but I think my big concern would be the experience on kind of Philadelphia's blue line in particular. I don't know if I feel great about, I don't know who's going out to shut down Sidney Crosby's line. I guess I'll put it that way. Assuming it's
Yeah.
Cam York, but, and I'm blanking on the,
That's a like Sanheim
yeah,
guys. They've
yeah.
got some names, but it's like this is the first big test. Um, and for it to be against someone like a Crosby is we'll see. I don't disagree that Philly could come out and just kind of be a little too overwhelming. Um, but I think we are both on the same page here that it like if we have to choose one here, we're leaning Pittsburgh due to just that experience. Been there, done that. If one team is going to dictate how the pace of the game is going, I lean towards Pittsburgh because again, been there, done that.
I think what really helps Pittsburgh in this series is we don't talk about it a lot, but home ice in this one might be important because keep being able to have last change in certain situations might be the difference because Philly has some very, very good players at the top of the lineup, but the minute that there's an offensive zone draw for the Penguins and Philadelphia puts out a line that is not as strong defensively, Pittsburgh can just put the Crosby line over the boards or the Malkin line, whatever, and that could lead to some kind of spiraling trouble. So last change might be important because Philadelphia doesn't seem to have the top to bottom depth to be able to handle a team who could put out a top heavy lineup at times.
Okay, so with that, the Metro side of the bracket kind of for both of us turns into the Carolina Hurricanes and Pittsburgh Penguins. But before we talk about that matchup, we'll finish up the first round on the Atlantic side. So the first team in the Atlantic was the Buffalo Sabres. Now we
Shockingly.
both, yeah, I mean, well, so we both had the Sabres as a playoff team at the beginning of the season. I initially didn't, but I think when we recorded our prediction episode, I let you talk me into it. We had them sneaking in as a wild card team, or maybe like wild card one. First in the Atlantic, 109 points, 50 wins. Everything clicked for the most part. Um, at the beginning of the season, there was definitely some questions. Even a couple months in, it was seeming very concerning that they were heading to a 15th year out of the playoffs. And they turned it right around. So they are first in the Atlantic, draw the wild card one matchup, which ended up being another kind of late season surging team, the Boston Bruins. Um, a lot of, well, I guess I shouldn't say a lot of, but I like this matchup just from a like division rival standpoint. So I guess I'll kind of lay it out this way, the way I see this. Buffalo, I think, is clearly the better team. And I do have them winning the series. What will be interesting to me is Buffalo, most of these guys have never played in a playoff game before. Boston and the way they can play, I think they're going to try and make this series a very rough physical series. Um, Ultimately, I'm picking the Sabres, so I think they overcome that. But I am very curious to see how Buffalo is able to handle that, especially it's one player, but they go out, they acquire Sam Carrick at the deadline, and now it's expected he misses this first series fully. That could have, I would say, helped kind of counter physicality from Boston, and he was also a good player in that role too. So, um, not saying that that's the thorn in Buffalo side. Oh, Sam Carrick's out. What are we going to do? But I do think there's going to be a little back and forth pull from the Sabres trying to play their super fast paced game, and then the Bruins trying to get a bit physical and rough things up a little bit.
Yeah, for the Sabres, that would be my biggest concern is Boston being able to take away the fast-paced up-tempo style that has been so successful, being able to muck it up a little bit.
Yep.
The regular season, they were pretty equal matchups, so I don't know what the season series ended up as, but it was very all games I remember were pretty close and tight, and Buffalo was certainly not ever out clearly out in front in most of those games. So I definitely worry about the matchup a little bit.
The other thing, real quick, that I'll toss in there for Boston, Swayman was very good this year. Um, so if Boston is just getting extremely physical, Sabres are struggling with it. They're not able to play their fast-paced game, and Swayman's locking things down for Boston. Like it could swing in Boston's favor. And again, picking the Sabres, but I don't expect this to be a flat out easy series for them.
Fact checking myself, Sabres Bruins played four times in the regular season. They played the second game of the season, which Buffalo early on was god awful. So Boston won that one 3-1. They played at the end of October. So Buffalo still is not really the team that we see playing the level that we see right now. Boston won that in overtime 4-3. In December, at the end of December, right out of the Christmas break, that was at home in Buffalo. They won that game. Buffalo won that game 4-1. That was when they were rolling. That was probably the only matchup that you could point to say that Buffalo clearly was the better team. And then about a month ago at this point, end of March, Boston won in overtime. That was right around the time that Buffalo was kind of easing up a little bit. I think there's a little less urgency in their game compared to Boston's game. So, and real fluky goal went into late for Boston to be able to tie that one. Casey Middlestat had scored late off of a board deflection that came right out in front of the net, and so it's not the best matchup on paper for Buffalo, but I don't know if they were going to get a matchup that I would say they should feel great about just the way that things were shaping up. Detroit probably would have been the team that the Sabres would have liked to have seen.
Yeah. I
So
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of goes back to when we talk about the best teams and the worst teams, they're all in the playoffs still. So like there's a reason they're there. Um And a team like Buffalo that was kind of turning into being notorious for the fast-paced game, it's somewhat obvious what teams are going to try and do to throw them off of that. And if a team is equipped well to do so, like Boston is, um, there's there should be a reasonable level of concern. Nothing to make you worry too much as a Sabres fan, but it's not a team like, okay, we're getting through the first round. Like, need to focus and find your game.
Yeah. Boston has some defenders and a goalie that can certainly be a thorn in the Sabres' fast-paced style. But I think, again, we've both been saying we think Buffalo gets through this. I think it's very tight. But if they can get through the first round, I think that that would be a big step for them as just a team building confidence. And I think the key is them just making sure they stick to their game and don't let Boston dictate play. As long as they can continue to do that, I think they get through. They can't get frustrated by Swayman making saves. They can't get frustrated by Boston trying to muck up the neutral zone. Just play their game, continue to push, and eventually they should get the results that they need.
Okay, so Buffalo to the second round, and they will have to face either the Montreal Canadiens or the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that's a round one matchup. I know you and I were kind of talking about just as Sabres fans, not really wanting to see Montreal in the first round. Um, which I will, I guess, spoil it right away. We've got Montreal pulling it off against Tampa. Um, I don't think this is going to be an easy series at all. I think it could be a very fun one to watch. Um, I'll be honest, I love the young talent that Montreal has. And this year specifically, they have at least who I would say is probably a Selkie favorite, should be. We'll see what voters end up doing, but Nick Suzuki has been very good this year. Cole Caulfield, 50 goals, 50, 51.
I think he
He
got to
he got to
51,
50.
but he broke 50 at least.
Okay. Um, and then just on the back end, Lane Hudson was very good. Um, just in general, they have more depth on the blue line. And then in goal, they were a little bit up and down throughout the year, but it seems like Dobish has kind of started to find his groove and play pretty well down the stretch.
Him and Fowler have been a solid tandem kind of once they moved away from working Montembeault, and it seems like things have improved. I know earlier in the season Dobish had expressed that he wasn't thrilled with the three goalie rotation.
Yeah.
They kind of went to Dobish Montembeault. Dobish started to get hot. Montembeault still struggled, and then they kind of went down to Dobish Fowler. So it should be a Dobish show for the most part in the playoffs. And he definitely was much better once he was the clear go-to guy.
Yeah, and then kind of looking over onto the Tampa side, it's still pretty much the same Tampa team we're used to seeing. Vasilevsky was very good this year. Um, on the back end, still kind of the same group, but I will say JJ Mosier is definitely a different defenseman than what people thought of him a couple of years ago. So that's added a little more depth there for them. Um, I will say up front, we've always kind of harped on them a little bit that they've got these very, very good elite forwards, and then kind of the second half of the forward lineup is not great. I still don't love it, but their depth up front, I think, has been a little bit better this year than in past years. Um, so I don't think this is, again, I don't think it's an easy series for either team, especially Montreal kind of relying on younger stars to get past Tampa Bay. Um, this is a series I'll just say I think it goes 7 games. Um, but I think Montreal is just, in a way, they're like too good, too flashy almost. They're in a good way though. Like I don't know if Tampa ends up being able to keep up with the young stars that Montreal has.
That's what it comes down to for me as well. I'm trying to check. I don't know if there's been full on clarity on Victor Hedman, who's been out with for personal reasons, and that's about the only thing that I can find. I don't think he's played yet in the since he kind of went out with personal reasons. Braden Point's been banged up off and on this season. Sorelli's been banged up off and on this season. Hagel's been banged up off and on this season. But even my big thing that I've been harping on, if Tampa had matched up with Montreal or Buffalo in the first round, is I don't think they have the speed to be able to keep up with the Sabres or Canadians, especially on their blue line with or without Victor Hedman back there. It's not like he's the fleetest of foot. Like he's very, very good, but he's not the fleetest of foot of all guys, especially at his age and at this point. And to me, that's the biggest concern that I would have. I could honestly see Montreal getting through pretty quickly because I don't know if Tampa can keep up with them.
That's certainly fair. I more say 7 because I lean towards just the kind of what we were saying with the Pittsburgh and Philly series. Been there, done that. I feel like it's not going to be easy for Montreal to get through Tampa, but um, I will absolutely acknowledge that point that they could get overwhelmed by speed. Um, and ultimately, we do both have Montreal getting past Tampa Bay. Um, so that kind of leads us into the second round of the East. I think we'll just continue with the East
Yeah,
since we're pretty much on the same page here. Um, and I guess we'll stick with Montreal. We'll kind of do a little snake draft styled discussion here. So we got Montreal Buffalo in the second round. Um, ultimately, Buffalo keeps home ice there. This is, and I briefly mentioned it as we were discussing the Montreal Tampa series, but this is kind of the matchup that we wanted Buffalo to avoid in the first round. This starts to get a little bit just kind of, it could turn into crazy back and forth. And ultimately, Montreal has that goal scoring there that I don't think we can just say Buffalo is the best offensive team here.
absolutely not. I mean, looking at their regular season matchups, all were incredibly tight. They had that stretch where they were playing basically once a week, and I think Buffalo came out winning two out of the three, but all of them were back and forth, incredibly tight. Season series, I believe they had split 2-2. Like these two teams are not identical on paper, but they have younger offensive driving players that can strike in an instant. Montreal has a lethal power play. Buffalo puts five guys on the ice against four skaters, and we'll just say that. But
Oh,
in the
God.
playoffs, there's generally less time on the power play for both teams.
Yep.
So 5-on-5, the Sabres had been the slightly better team in all their matchups. Probably the Sabres back end from top to bottom is definitely better than Montreal's back end from top to bottom. Goalie probably similar. Forwards, I think I like the Sabres depth just ever so slightly more kind of third, fourth line, I would take over Montreal's third, fourth line. So I think logically breaking that down, you lean slightly Buffalo, but to me, this series is as close to a coin flip as I could, is
Yeah.
maybe almost any series the entire kind of playoffs that we have broken out.
Yeah, they're very similar. I look kind of in net, and they've both got goalies playing well, but they're not necessarily goalies you fully trust yet. So like it and up front, they're just back and forth. They're gonna just play a very fast-paced game. It's two very similar teams. Um, and maybe that ends up working in one of their in favor of one of them, but um, yeah, I fully expect this series to be a bit difficult for the teams to get through. Um, I think it is another series that could end up going 7 games. We'll see, we'll see, but that might be the best series in the East if it ultimately happens that we get to watch this playoffs. Um, that said, we'll move down to the other second round matchup.
Just to be clear, we're both leaning
Oh
Buffalo
yes,
through.
yes,
So we're both leaning Buffalo to the Eastern Conference Finals. But
yep.
for me, it's a coin flip, and I can't imagine you feel much different about that.
No, and to be completely transparent, again, we are both Buffalo fans. So even when we are trying to not have any bias there, like we are both very much at a coin flip for that series. Um, moving to the other matchup in the second round, Carolina Hurricanes, Pittsburgh Penguins. Mentioned pretty early in this episode that whatever matchup here that Carolina got, they're rolling through. Um, I think they are just too good of a team that we ultimately both had Pittsburgh being the matchup here for the Hurricanes. And I don't know. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh wins a game. I would say, like, great job, thumbs up if they win two against Carolina. Um, but they're just too good across the board, I think, for Pittsburgh to do much there.
Yeah, even if it Ottawa pulls off the upset against Carolina in the first round, I'd
Yeah.
almost have the same feeling. Maybe think it's a little bit tighter, but I just don't see the winner of the Battle of Philadelphia having much of a shot against either of the other two opponents. So it's, yeah, Carolina's just a far superior team to Pittsburgh, and I think Ottawa also would be maybe not far superior, but definitely a superior team. So I don't think that there's much of a chance for the Penguins or the Flyers to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
So what you are saying, and I agree, but what you are saying is you see Buffalo in the Eastern Conference Finals, and their opponent is either the Carolina Hurricanes or the Ottawa Senators.
Yep.
There's some storytelling there.
Yep. Going back 20 years.
So yeah, I guess that kind of leads us into the Eastern Conference Final. Buffalo Sabres and, as we picked it, Carolina Hurricanes. Um, this is, I think, I know I mentioned thinking that Buffalo Montreal could end up being the best series. This series is more kind of the very, very elite, fast-paced team versus the very, very elite shutdown team. It's kind of like if throughout the Eastern Conference, if you were going to pick like two very different styles and the best at them and put them against each other, that's what we're saying the Eastern Conference final will be. Buffalo Sabres, river hockey
Yep.
against the Carolina Hurricanes. What do we want to call that? Like mountain? No. Mountain hockey? I don't know.
Lumberjack.
Rough
No.
something lumberjack. Not yeah, we'll work on that. But so ultimately, as painful as it is to say, this is where I've got the Sabres stopping their run. Carolina beats them. And I'll spoil it. You've got the same.
Yeah. Buffalo has just not matched up well against Carolina over however long.
Yeah.
I think they've won one game in Carolina in like 15 years. And I know that that's not everything, but just the style of play the Hurricanes play and the style of play and the way Buffalo's kind of responded to that over the years, it just has not worked. I also think a big factor is if Buffalo gets this far, they've went through two very tough opponents,
Yes.
especially if they're going through a Montreal or even a Tampa Bay in round two. That's going to probably take a lot out of them, where Carolina probably rolls through Pittsburgh, maybe has a tough first round, but gets an easier second round and should come into the conference finals a lot fresher. I it's just not a good matchup for Buffalo. If Ottawa got through, I it could be a little bit different. I like that matchup a little bit better,
Yeah.
but Buffalo has also struggled a little bit playing Ottawa as of late too. So it's coming down to matchups. I like the matchups best for Buffalo in the East, in the Atlantic Division part. But once they get
Yes.
to the likely winner of the Metro part, I don't know if I love that matchup as much.
I'm with you. Do you know TNT or ESPN have these games off the
Yes,
top of your head?
once we get to the Eastern Conference Finals,
Yeah.
I have
Whoever it
no
is.
I have no clue. I know ESPN's carrying Sabres Bruins round one, or at least game
Okay.
one, I should say. But I think
I'm
they
I'm
rotate a little bit.
I'm envisioning like Tage Thompson just hitting crossbar after crossbar and whatever really good graphics guy putting up like the ghost of Kevin Adams.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe even Eric Stahl can be in the background a little bit.
Cam Ward.
Oh God. Um, yeah, so ultimately Carolina gets to the cup final. Who will
Break
they
Sabres
face?
fans' hearts again.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But honestly, I will say like if Buffalo goes on a run like this, I'm gonna feel good. It'll be
I,
very
I, I,
sad if they get bounced, but
I think most fans would. Yeah,
like just the fact we're watching playoff games on Sunday,
yeah.
awesome. But okay, so Carolina gets to the cup final. We gotta figure out who we have them facing. Um, we are pretty much, I'll spoil it. We're on the same page at the end. How we get there is slightly different in the West.
I would say
Ever
a
so
lot.
slightly.
I would say almost entirely different.
Oh yeah, a little bit
We have
different.
very
Yeah.
few actually similar outside of the same team coming out. We have very few similar
Yep.
opponents.
Well, let's start here. President's Trophy winners, Colorado Avalanche. We were a little curious just this last night of the regular season. It was still up in the air of who they were ultimately going to have. It was looking like it was going to be potentially the Kings, and it ended up being the Kings, wild card two. So that's one where I easily have the Colorado Avalanche winning this series. Um, I'm going to give it to LA and say they can have a game. So I will assign 5 games to this series. Colorado is very good. Their goalies were very good this year. Defensively, they were very good. Offensively, very good. Um, I'm not really sure. I guess I don't want to spoil it too much, but the LA Kings, I'm not overly confident in their game. Um, Obviously, they just snuck in. In theory, they could try and play a little bit of a shutdown game, but I don't think their shutdown game is good enough to stop the Colorado Avalanche.
I'm giving LA absolutely no chance. I think Colorado, 4 games.
Sweep. Okay.
For context here, the Los Angeles Kings had 22 regulation wins in the regular season. That is less than the New York Rangers, less than the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the same number as the Chicago Blackhawks. The only team that had less regulation wins than the Los Angeles Kings in the regular season were the Vancouver Canucks,
Yeah.
and they were tied with the Chicago Blackhawks. And that team made the playoffs and are coming up against one of the most complete teams that we have seen in recent years. I give them no shot.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to be nice and give them one game. I don't think they have any chance at the series, to be clear. Um, I don't have a whole lot else to say on the series, so
Nope.
it should very easily be Colorado moving to the second round.
Correct.
Who are they facing in the second round? This is kind of our first difference here a little bit. Dallas, Minnesota is the matchup. Dallas has the home ice advantage here as the second team in the Central, Wild third team. I've got the Minnesota Wild pulling this off. And I will say two things. One, Quinn Hughes. Two, Rupe Hintz, I believe, is going to miss at least a portion of this series. And I think that ends up being a very big factor. Let me fact check myself. And if you would like to explain how you got to Dallas beating the Wild.
I basically flipped a coin in my head, to be honest. I don't feel great about picking either team in this series. This matchup to me is like the most equal on paper. I think I like the form Dallas has been in at the end of the season. I think as much as Ottinger has had some question marks in the playoffs, I think I feel a little bit better about him in goal. I think I feel a little bit better about Dallas's just experience, and they have added some nice players to bolster their depth. Where Minnesota still, I guess I would question their scoring depth throughout the lineup, where I feel a little bit more confident in Dallas. Maverick Bork had a good end to the regular season, so maybe he can kind of keep that going. But to me, it's very, very close. Like all those things that I just laid out could be a couple could actually go Minnesota's way. Like Minnesota's depth forwards end up being better, and that flips the series. It's just a pure coin flip to me. I think that it's a shame that these two teams are playing in the first round, but it's probably one of the must tune in matchups in the first round as well. It's probably the one of actually ultimately when all said and done in the West, outside of the Colorado Kings, all these matchups are kind of interesting in their own unique way.
Yeah. Um, I will say so the update on Hintz was he's probably not playing games one or two. At that point, they will see if he can return. So he's kind of, as of now, a coin flip for later in the series. Heiskanen has been out hurt. He is expected to be back for game one. Um, and I'll say this, I'm very much on the same page that this is going to be a very tough series. I don't think Minnesota, when I pick them, I don't think they're walking over Dallas, and this is 4 or 5 games. This to me is a 7 game series. Um, And I very much think that a player like Hintz being out a couple games, I mean, I guess you never know that that's the cause of it, but I think that could have an impact here. Um, Either way, we'll finish the central part of the bracket here. Either way, we're both on the same page of what happens next. So I had the Wild, you had Dallas, but ultimately they are up against the Colorado Avalanche, and we have both of our picks losing to the Colorado Avalanche in the second round. Um, Much more difficult matchups for Colorado than the LA Kings. Becomes a little bit more of a real series where there could be some um fight back, punch back. I don't even know the words I'm going for. But ultimately we both have Colorado overcoming whether it's the Wild or the Stars.
Yeah, I think my only point there is I think the first round matchup, Colorado comes in a lot fresher than whoever wins the
Yeah.
other series, and that probably is the difference this year. I think past years when Colorado's ended up matching up against Dallas or anything, both teams have been similar, equal rest, maybe even a little bit advantage to Dallas. This year, I think Dallas very much struggles, or Minnesota very much struggles to even get to the second round. And that's where probably Colorado takes advantage. Plus, Colorado's team this year is a little bit stronger on paper, I think, than both Dallas and Minnesota, where the past few years, I don't think I could have confidently said that in relation to Dallas, at least. So,
Yep.
yeah, I agree we are in agreement, Colorado to the Western Conference Finals.
Okay, so that's got Colorado. Then we got to figure out of the Pacific corner.
The pillow fight corner.
We'll start with Pacific 1, Vegas Golden Knights. So they won the Pacific. Wild card 1 is their matchup, and that is the Utah Mammoth. Coming out of the Central technically, but they're down in the Pacific corner.
Probably to their
This
own
match,
benefit.
yeah, honestly, like if they want a chance of moving ahead, this is where it is. Um, that being said, we differ on this. So I do have Utah pulling off moving to the second round against Vegas. You do not. This is, I will just be completely clear. This is my one pick where I'm kind of like, I don't know if I fully expect Utah to get there. But if I'm going to make a pick of kind of an underdog, I like this matchup, Utah Mammoth kicking out the Vegas Golden Knights.
You're picking with your heart, not your head here.
Yeah. Well, if I was picking with my heart, I would have kept Anaheim going over Edmonton like I had at the start of the year, but not
Well,
doing that. I'm being a little more serious.
so I think Vegas, the bringing in of Torts has actually been the difference for me.
Yeah.
I feel much they're in form now going into the playoffs. I think had they limped in like the pace they were on, I might have a different opinion, and heck, they probably aren't in Pacific One if they didn't make that move. So I think they're in better form. I think they have much more play. Well, they definitely have much more playoff experience than the Utah Mammoth.
Yep.
So I think Vegas gets it done from experience, from the boost that they got bringing in Torts. To me, that's enough to get them over the inexperienced Utah team. But I, if Utah's top six is clicking, I'm not sure Vegas can keep up with their scoring punch. And I'd also very much be concerned about Vegas's goaltending. Not to say that I have much more faith in what Utah has going on back there, but Utah has guys that have really good shots and are really good at scoring goals. And if Vegas isn't getting some saves, they could be forced to play a different style of hockey. and that might be an issue for them. But if Vegas can kind of control the pace of play, not get super far behind, I think Utah's going to have a tough time overcoming them in a series. But games could be very tight and exciting.
Okay, so I've got Utah, you've got Vegas.
Yep.
Who do they face? It's one of the Edmonton Oilers or the Anaheim Ducks. Um, I already spoiled my pick. I've got Edmonton now. I did have the Ducks in the playoffs at the beginning of the season, and I actually had them beating Edmonton in the first round. I'm not going to go that far right now. Um, the Ducks are a very good young team. I don't think they've quite got enough to get past McDavid ultimately. Like that's what this is being better than Connor McDavid.
Everything I basically just said for Vegas also applies for the Oilers. They should win,
Yeah.
but they're up against a team that has some top six forwards that can score, and they have some questionable questions in net on making some saves. If things start to go the other way, the only difference is I feel more confident that Edmonton can play a fast pace from behind style if necessary than Vegas can. So
Yep.
I don't like this matchup for Anaheim between lack of, well, they have a lack of experience as a group, but they have a lot of guys on that team that have a lot of playoff experience and multiple Stanley
Yeah.
Cups. So it's not like they don't have experience individually, but as a group, they have not played in the postseason.
Their young core specifically, like the guys they ultimately want to be relying on in the big moments, are not the ones with that experience.
Will say goaltending though, I would much rather have Lucas Dolstall in my goal than whoever Edmonton rolls out each game. Is that going to be the difference? Probably not, but could it be? Yes.
So ultimately, we've got Edmonton going to the second round. Um, I have them up against Utah. I have them beating Utah. You have Edmonton in the second round up against Vegas, and you've got Vegas kind of continuing their really strong play under Torts
Yeah.
and beating Edmonton. So for me, it's very much okay, Utah's this young team. They advance, they get past Vegas. They just don't quite have enough to kind of keep those good vibes going. And Edmonton's just a little bit too much. You've got maybe a little more even of a matchup, Vegas and Edmonton. And as you kind of described with these first round matchups, now that you've got both Vegas and Edmonton to that second round, their flaws are very similar. Um, I am curious though, as you do have Vegas kicking Edmonton out, how do you get to that?
It's just kind of, I don't know. It's very much coin flip, just like I have Dallas over Minnesota. I can talk myself into either direction. I think a little bit concerned with Draisaitl still not being healthy.
Yeah.
That would be one. I think I like Vegas's depth just a touch more. Their I think their blue line's better than Edmonton's, and that matters in the playoffs. I think Edmonton has guys up front that can score a little bit more, but I think Vegas might have the more well-rounded 1 through 4 lines with their kind of additions at the trade deadline, bring a little bit more depth there. And I think I have just a slight more confidence in whoever Vegas rolls out in goal, whether that's Hill or Hart, than Ingram or Jari at this point.
I will say, just did a quick Google search. If this matters at all to you, Draisaitl might not start game one in the Anaheim series, but he is probably back at some point during it.
Yeah, but what's back and playing as far as relative to being healthy at this point?
True.
This, like we saw him play a couple of years ago through some very clear and obvious pain and injury. I
Yeah.
don't see him being 100% if, I mean, I don't know enough. Shouldn't be playing doctor here,
Right.
but it just feels like this is something that it's not going to be 100% until the off season. So I think that those slight margins might be the difference.
Okay, so we get to a Western Conference final of the Colorado Avalanche. I have them facing Edmonton. You have them facing Vegas. We both have the Colorado Avalanche advancing to the Stanley Cup final. Um, and not to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it just seems like with all the matchups for Colorado, they are the better team on paper. Um, it's very hard to justify them losing. They are the favorite in all of these matchups. And I would even go as far as saying that I will say their second round matchup is their most difficult.
Agree 100%.
Whoever it ends up being, I'll say, whether it's your Dallas pick or my Minnesota pick, I think that matchup is the matchup that will give them the most problems. And once they get through that, they should be able to get to the cup final.
Yep.
Anything to add there?
No, that's exactly. I played around a little bit with that with the winner of the Dallas Minnesota matchup, then the winner of the that matchup playing Colorado in the Western Conference Finals. Like to me, the second round in the Central might be the most important series in the entire playoffs
Yeah.
because to me, those whoever comes out of that is probably the favorite to go on and win the entire thing.
Yep. So ultimately, that brings us to a cup final, both of us. We've got Colorado against the Carolina Hurricanes. Um, this is probably the worst matchup for Colorado. It's the one team they probably don't want to see, in my opinion.
I don't know.
I think Buffalo, in just the fast pace of play, and maybe even Montreal to an extent, like you're worried about it. To me, if I'm Colorado, the shutdown play of Carolina could give us some problems.
Maybe. I guess I go back to if I'm Colorado, the only matchup I'm truly worried about is probably the other Central Division team in the entire
Oh,
playoffs.
sure. Yeah, yes. I just mean from a like being in the cup final, Carolina of all the teams in the East is probably the team you most don't want to face if
I
you're
got
Colorado.
yeah. Yeah.
Colorado should win this series.
Yes.
We both have Colorado winning this, and that was a fairly easy pick. As a cup final, I think it'll still be good. I don't think Carolina's a team you're walking over.
No.
Um, I'd say I'll probably go like 6 games for Colorado.
That's what I'm
Um,
thinking.
so 4-2, but um, yeah, it's both on paper and then like as a roster, and then what actually happened in the regular season. It's it's very difficult to pick against the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
Um, any justification otherwise, you're kind of like you can get there and you can make reasonable, solid points for other teams to win, but there's still going to be the but Colorado on paper, their roster is better than anyone they're going to face. And then what that roster was able to actually do is better than any other team did this season. Do you believe in a President's Trophy curse? Maybe. So maybe someone does pull it off, but I don't know. sitting here today, I'm comfortable saying the Colorado Avalanche will win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, looking at so one of the things that you always kind of wonder is there a goalie that like goaltending can make or break? I think if Colorado's going to have issues, it's because their goaltending imploded, as has been the
Yeah.
case multiple times for them in the playoffs. With that said, looking at just the 16 teams in the playoffs, you got Ottinger that could get hot, but historically has struggled a little bit in the playoffs. Minnesota, Gustafson, or Walls that could get hot, but I'd have a little less confidence there. Aiden Hill's gotten hot at times, but like just looking at all 16 teams, Andre Vasilevsky and Jeremy Swayman are the only two goalies that you feel like those are the ones that could potentially win series and carry teams. Everywhere else across the board, it's like as long as they get enough saves, it's going to come down to who's the better 5-on-5 team because the goalie matchups are probably very similar across the board. There's no Sorokin, there's no Shesterkin, there's no Hellebuck in these playoffs where it's like you got to be careful not to get goalied as a team. This year, it's I that's what I think I'd be worried about most for Colorado. But at the same point, I don't see a team outside of maybe Ottinger that's truly going to goalie, kind of get the goalie matchup, and that's going to be the difference.
Yeah, and Colorado's own goalie situation. I think it's going to be Wedgwood. He just, I mean, they both had very good seasons, but his was a bit better. Um, that's it's tough because they played so well. It's I almost hate that I'm saying this, but do you fully trust Scott Wedgwood through an entire Stanley Cup playoffs? Maybe. I mean, we'll see. Um, but it is usually when a team gets to the playoffs, they pick a guy. Even if they're more of a tandem like Wedgwood and Blackwood have been. So I don't know. We'll see. But as much as we can talk about what other teams have goalies to maybe shut Colorado down, if something goes wrong for Colorado, it's probably their goaltending.
Yep. Yep. So we both have Colorado winning it all. So I was asked by someone the other day, is there anyone I like as a bet in the playoffs? And I had sent a group of let me 7 teams that I said I think this is where the best value lies. So I'll read off those teams and those odds, and you tell me which of these teams that I think have a little bit of value to them you would pick. So Dallas plus 1200, Edmonton plus 1400, Ottawa plus 1600, Minnesota plus 1700, Buffalo plus 1,800, and Utah and Montreal plus 3,500. Those were the teams that I had said I think that's where the value lies. Whether they're going to win, I'm not saying that, but there's at least a little bit of interesting where you put a few dollars down where you could actually get some level of return. And to me, that's where I would pick a team in there to maybe put a few bucks on.
I mean, Buffalo and Montreal, those are both intriguing. And Montreal's is very intriguing. I'd definitely throw a little bit down
Yeah.
on 3,500. Yeah. Um, I mean, as we talked about it, we both have them ultimately beating Tampa. When we get to a series where we both have it, Buffalo, Montreal, like we're close on a coin flip there.
Yeah.
Let's say Montreal beats Buffalo and they go to the Eastern Conference Finals and it's Carolina. That's a tough series. And I'm still, I think, would lean towards Carolina will pull that off. But if I'm looking at plus 3,500, that's close enough. It's reasonable to throw $5 down on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's kind of where I ended up as well. And if Montreal, Colorado end up as the Cup final, Montreal is probably the one of the few teams that can score with Colorado.
yeah. Well, so I would kind of say the same thing about Buffalo. Like if
Yeah,
Buffalo can get there, the odds aren't as great as Montreal's, but it's worth throwing a little bit down probably. And then if you're someone that has some doubts with Colorado, whatever it may be, maybe you just think they're too perfect. I At what you tossed out to me there, I look at Dallas and Minnesota.
yeah,
Um, Whichever of those teams you think is getting to the second round against Colorado could be worth throwing a little bit down on them too.
yeah,
Um, I probably stay away from Utah. I don't see them having the same punch as Montreal does in the East. And then I look at Ottawa. I don't even if they can kind of get through Carolina, I don't know if they're getting all the way through and winning the cup. I don't think they're that good. And then the last team you had listed was Edmonton. It's Connor McDavid. It's hard to completely rule that out, but of all those teams plus 1400, I don't know if that's quite good enough for me when I look at what they're going to have to go up against. So I probably don't do that one.
yeah. Ottawa, I think's not the best value there. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see a scenario where they do get to the Cup final, but I
Yeah.
that's just
I
I
even if they get there, if they're facing Colorado, no.
yeah, yeah. I think almost anyone from the West, they just aren't going to have the firepower and the
Yeah.
goaltending to match up potentially. So yeah, those were kind of where I had honed in is like there could be a little value there. Those are some fun teams to also root for.
Yeah.
Like watch like those are games that you would want to tune in and watch a lot of those teams play. So disclaimer, of course, don't bet money you're unwilling to and unable to lose. But that was kind of where I had zoned in on the value in the playoffs. I think I like Montreal plus 3,500 might be where I put a few dollars. So
That's worth doing.
yeah,
Hedge your bets and give a little money to them.
yeah. That was my last thing that I wanted to just kind of hit on because I thought that that was interesting. I think there is a little potential, a little value in the betting market there. So
Yeah.
I guess if you made it this long, maybe we'll help you a little bit.
We'll see though. Again, do not bet money you do not have.
Correct. Well, with that, I think we will wrap up our playoff preview. We're still on a week to week, whether we record, whether we run contracts, what schedules look like. So we might be back with another episode next week in 2 weeks, or we might not be back again until our contract projections are released. But we appreciate you listening, subscribing Max Turn Podcast, following us on X Blue Sky Threads, and you'll know when all new content, including the podcast and contract projections, are posted for your viewing, listening, analyzing pleasure. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you next time.